thank you, O God, for this day that you have granted to us. Lord, as we come to be about the county business, we ask you, O God, to help us to make the right decision on what we are to do today. Thank you for this time. In your name we pray. We say amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time, motion to approve October minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Bill Harding.
Mr. Chairman, as Mr. Harden approaches, I think it may be a little bit helpful for me to give some history on this. And Mr. Harden, I certainly don't want to steal any of your time or comments. But this appeal arises out of your June 8th, I believe it was, approval of the Stribling Market site plan. At that time, when that site plan was submitted, Scott and I both reviewed it, went and looked in the Chancery Court records, or Chancery Clerk's records from back in 2008, when a master plan for Lake Caroline, there was a whole issue Supreme Court case over the Lake Caroline development at that time because the golf course was failing. And so there was an attempt or a need to amend their master development plan because the golf course was going away. They were going to put houses there where the golf course is now. So many issues were litigated over that, and at the outcome of that Supreme Court case, the Supreme Court ordered them to come back to, them being the developer, to come back to the Board of Supervisors on the issue of the existence of a Lake Caroline Master Development Plan. There were a bunch of documents floating around in files and being circulated, but none of them were clear. So in 2008, I believe it was December of 2008, the Board of Supervisors at that time had 4 possible master development plans in front of them, varying from, I think, 1989 all the way up to 2008. At that meeting, they selected the 2003 Master Development Plan for Lake Caroline as the 2008 Master Development Plan. So they had 4 to choose from. They chose the 2003. On that Master Development Plan, obviously it shows the residential designations, the golf course, and it shows this particular property where the Stribling Market is to be located as commercial development consistent with PUD zoning. The only, at that time, a P1 PUD in your ordinance was the only PUD in there, and it was a standalone zoning district. This is going back to the 1983 zoning ordinance. Well, since that time, there have been numerous amendments to the zoning ordinance. P1 PUD is no longer, has not been a part of the ordinance for quite some time. For whatever reason, that was never brought forward or clarified as to what that zoning designation would be going forward. So now let's jump back to this past June. Scott and I went to Chancery Clerk's office, dug through the files. We found a master development plan that was in there. Had no reason to believe that it was not the master development plan for Lake Caroline. It clearly showed the property that is subject to the Stribling market as C2. So that's what we based our opinion on before the site plan was submitted to you. Now we know, after having dug through Chancery Clerk's files, the storage in the basement, and the Circuit Clerk's file, that we were in error. That colored master development plan that we had at the last meeting is of no moment. I believe it was stuck in the Chancery Clerk's file as a possible master development plan, but it was never approved. And its existence has no bearing on our decision. So we were in error there as to telling you all that the property was definitely zoned C2. Mr. Harden has appealed Scott's administrative interpretation of the ordinance. Basically, as I understand him and talking to him, based on that, is that, hey, you guys pulled a master development plan that said C2. That's wrong. So that's what his appeal is here about today. I'd like for you all to hear from Mr. Harden today, and I may have some comments or some questions that would help guide you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name's Bill Harden. I live at 142 Bridgewater Drive, Madison, Mississippi, Lake Caroline. I didn't hear about the convenience store till after the site plan had already been approved, and I came up here on June the 9th, met with Scott, asked to see the zoning map, asked to see any letters that ever verified the property was C2. He told me that the board said it was C2. And I said, well, that's not their job, that's your job. I know, I used to be a zoning administrator for over 20 years. So anyway, that's how this started. I would point out that the zoning ordinance, section 806.04, says proposed rezoning shall be consistent with adopted comprehensive plan. No amendment to the official zoning map shall be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission unless the proposed rezoning is consistent with all four elements of the adopted comprehensive plan of Madison County, including the goals and objectives, the land use plan, the transportation plan, and the community facilities plan. The land use plan for all of Lake Caroline calls for moderate or medium density residential. There's no commercial, with one exception. They have updated it to show that the Mermaid restaurant is commercial on the land use plan. Section 2703 of the zoning ordinance states that in a PUD, rezoning was required for development of a portion of a PUD for townhouses, patio homes, multifamily, or commercial uses. I believe this board heard a zoning case a few years ago for some townhouses. They're over on the west side of the lake near Martinique. They made them go through the rezoning process for that property. And that's what I'm here today to say. If there's going to be any commercial zoning in Lake Caroline, it's got to go through the zoning process. This decision affects thousands of property owners that have bought into Lake Caroline, and I think any commercial use out there would certainly be detrimental to their property values. Stribling Road, as classified in the Madison County Transportation Plan, is classified as a medium arterial road. It's not a highway. This C2 highway commercial would be inappropriate on that road. There's plenty of vacant commercial property at major intersections with traffic signals where a convenience store could be built. For instance, Bozeman Road and Gluckstadt Road, that intersection. I do believe that if there's going to be any commercial zoning in the Lake Caroline Plan Unit development, it should be non-retail in nature. In other words, office use only. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. One last thing. What we both, I think Andy and I both agree on are the master plans that were adopted in 2008. It refers to the subject property, future commercial development in accordance with PUD zoning, which leads me back to the point, in order to have commercial in a PUD, you've got to go through the rezoning process. You have any questions?
Are you here representing the community, or are you just speaking as a private citizen?
A lot of my neighbors know my background. I was zoning administrator for the City of Jackson from 1981 to 2002 before I retired, went into private real estate development. I've been an expert witness in zoning at the courthouse to the north and the courthouse on the square when we were successful in annexing part of Madison County. So I've been in a lot of court cases. I know a good bit about zoning.
I don't doubt your credentials.
People just ask me to get involved, and that's the reason I'm here today.
My question, thank you.
Thank you.
I will say that it has been an absolute pleasure working with Mr. Harden. He has been persistent, asked appropriate and proper questions. It's been a pleasure dealing with you. Yes, thank you. I disagree with Mr. Harden in that this requires a rezoning, and here's why. There's no question that the Lake Caroline PUD was adopted, that is in existence. The question was the master development plan, which we have solved. We have one. We know which one is in effect. But as I said earlier, the P1 PUD that was in existence at the time of the adoption of the Lake Caroline PUD was a standalone district, and if you read that out of the 1983 ordinance, it pretty much left commercial development wide open at the discretion of the Board of Supervisors. As I said, again, that P1 PUD is no longer in existence, and for whatever reason, I don't know, I can't answer that. I believe it was just one of those things where it's not a problem until it's a problem, and now we have a problem. The zoning was never brought forward from that P1 PUD. The day that it disappeared, there was never any pigeonholed designation. But the fact remains that your approval, your June approval of this site plan was based on erroneous information. So my recommended course of action is that you all rescind your June approval of the site plan, and that we will ask the Board of Supervisors to set this matter for a public hearing at their first meeting in December, which would be December the 6th. Because the decision on what designation this is now rests with them. And then at that point, whatever they decide, I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but I don't think there's any doubt that this property is for commercial use. But now we have numerous variations of commercial districts. We have the C1A district, which a convenience store is not permitted in that district. We have a C1 designation convenience stores are permitted in that district as a conditional use. C2 designation, convenience stores are permitted outright, which is what you approved based on the erroneous information. So that's my recommendation for you all, is to rescind your June 8th, 2003 approval of the Stribling Market site plan and request that the Board of Supervisors conduct a public hearing at their next available meeting to take this matter up.
And then the Board of Supervisors would then determine the permanent zoning for that site?
Yes. This has happened before, oddly enough, out at Lake Caroline, but on the north end, and it's not Lake Caroline property. A master development plan was in place that simply said commercial property, and we took it before the Board of Supervisors. They determined that that was in fact C2, but as Mr. Harden alluded to, that particular property did adjoin Highway 22 as opposed to an interior arterial type of road. So there is some precedent for that. We've had this come up before. It's unfortunate, it's confusing, but we've done this before.
Entertain a motion.
I would move, if Andy can remember what he said, I would move that we follow his recommendation and allow the Board of Supervisors to handle this.
Second.
Been motion and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, so it is.
Before we move on, can I ask Andy and Scott one more question?
Go ahead.
Once this is settled, do we need to modify anything in our zoning plan or in anything to keep this from happening again?
I think once this is settled and the board makes their decision, then the zoning map and all that will be updated to show that, just like it would be any other.
If I can say one last thing.
Come on up to the mic, Mr. Harden. We're streaming here, so all we can hear you is mumbling from back there.
I think if the board is going to consider zoning the property to commercial, I think first they've got to amend their land use plan, because it calls for medium to moderate density residential use only. Zoning has to be in conformance with your land use plan.
Thank you. White Farms.
Good morning. I'm Daniel Wooldridge. I'm the architect for the project representing White Farms. This is a project located on Highway 51, just north of Gluckstadt. It's a family-owned piece of property, and it's also a family-owned business. And what they want to do, they're in the business of construction or putting in concrete pilings for foundations and that sort of thing. So what they're wanting to do is place a building on their property, be able to use for the inside part of the building, be used for their storage and their maintenance. They got a covered area in the back to park vehicles in that they want out of the weather, and then they have an area in the back of the site to park trucks and equipment on. Now the building is a pre-engineered metal building with a wood front. We're going to put a board and batten wood front facing the highway. We've set it considerably way back off the road so that it's just not right up on the street, not right up on Highway 51. The fence, the area in the back will be fenced. The fence also facing Highway 51 will be a wood fence, so that you really don't see the trucks and the equipment that are behind the fence. The remaining of the fence will be a cyclone or chain link fence in that area. There is an existing gravel driveway that goes back to an area that at once upon a time, I think there had been a barn or a shed that is set in this area. So they're going to improve this driveway, which will be a driveway of gravel. And then the area in front, the parking area in front of the building will also be a gravel. And then the area for handicap parking will obviously have to be a concrete area for parking and getting out of the car. Landscaping is a minimal amount of landscaping actually, but we're set way off the road. Everything that's to the front of it's going to be left natural. The grass and what trees and such are on the site. But back up at the parking area, we will provide hedges and trees shielding parking from Highway 51. The color of the building is going to be a grayish color metal building, and the board and batten siding will also be that same color of a gray.
Are there any visibility issues on the backside from the interstate?
From the interstate? No, it's way off the interstate. Yeah, we're on the east side of Highway 51, so we're not even close to the
I thought
interstate.
you were on the west side, I'm sorry.
No, sir.
Any other questions?
All right. You're using the total 3 acres in order to qualify for your C2 zoning?
Well, the total site is C2, and they own the entire property. They're just setting their building just further back off the road, but the entire
But it takes the whole parcel in order to qualify under a C2 zoning. A minimum is 3 acres, so it takes the whole parcel. The back of this parcel, the east side, abuts a residential district
It does.
and requires some landscaping or a fence. What is the rule on that?
Well, it requires a 50-foot setback if you don't have a fence.
Right.
And a 20-foot setback if you do have a fence. And that area of that 50 or the 20 has to be a green space. I don't think it requires any special landscaping in that green space.
Just mentions landscaping. I'm curious as what that would be.
Yeah. Great question. And we've come up with this before. What is landscaping? Is it sod? Is it knockout roses? Is it Russian olive trees? What? We don't really have a definition for that. I think obviously the purpose is some sort of beautification and or screening. So whatever he's got on his site plan here, you are certainly authorized to approve that. If you would like to impose a little bit more and ask for some screening type of landscape, that would be a portion or part of your motion to approve or for further consideration.
And we do have a fence on that property line in the back,
Right.
and we're set well off that property line more than 50 feet.
Yeah.
And that would probably be all just left natural back there is what their plan would be.
Yes, all the way to Sowell Road is part of this property.
That's correct.
Your property. And it abuts a residential district.
That's correct.
According to our ordinance, it requires some form of landscaping all the way to Sowell Road.
Okay.
And then Sowell Road is I think a minor arterial thoroughfare, I believe. It may be a major. It also requires landscaping and a buffer, or landscaping, actually. We'd like to know, I would like to know what the plans for landscaping along Sowell and also along the whole length of the east side of your property.
Well, again, that was an area we were just going to avoid and not do anything with at all and leave it as natural like it is today. But I'm sure we can come in and put some trees along Sidewell. We're not using any access off of Sidewell.
Right.
So we don't have a driveway that we're using at that point, at this point off of Sidewell, but we can provide,
You're basically using only the south
that's correct, we're just using it
of
south
this,
part.
but,
I understand what you're saying, that is part of the property.
yeah, it's
So-
part of the property.
We can provide for the, we can do an approval contingent that we will provide some landscaping, and we will, and provide it to Scott and show some landscaping along that north line along Sidewell and that east line along
Between
that residential.
this and the residential.
That's correct.
Right. Now, I noticed that there are a lot of trees right just north of there. The adjacent north is a, what is that? A daycare center or it's a house. It's a residential house, I think, being used as a daycare center. Let me see what it is.
Right on 51 or on, off of Sidewell?
Preschool, maybe, something like
Off
that.
of
It's on,
Sidewell.
at the corner of Sowell and 51. You have trees there. There's no, they have no plans of taking those trees out, right?
We're not planning on taking any trees out, no ma'am.
So that'll be an adequate buffer between
That's
there.
correct. Yeah, we're not gonna take out any trees.
And the operation is basically, it's a private operation. There's
it's a
really
private-
no
it's a-
noise level that's gonna be coming from that area that would,
No, ma'am, no, they're a company that works off-site. They work on construction sites off-site from here. This is more of a base for them for, parking their trucks. They may do some maintenance on the inside of the building, but I don't, find it being continuously or loud. There's no openings to the north toward the daycare side.
will
of the
there
building.
be employees there during every working day or just?
Not an 8-hour
It's a
day. No,
come and go
no, ma'am.
thing?
It's just, it's just something to come and go, and they'll come in the morning, pick their trucks up and their equipment and leave. The owner, he may be there a little while doing some paperwork. We got one office on the inside, so he may be doing some paperwork, but besides that, there's not a 8-hour day of people sitting out there doing work.
Okay, all right. For the record, let's talk about this open shed. And under C2 designation warehouse, you are not supposed to have an open storage, but could someone address that for us?
Well, that open area is mainly just for them to be able to park personal vehicles out of the weather. That's the reason they want that open under there.
So is that acceptable?
I think so with that, and Scott, you jump in here anytime you want to. I don't want to make this the Andy show today. But I think what the purpose of that in the ordinance would be for, say, a lumber yard or a brick yard, or even like in the instance of a mini storage where they're storing boats and RVs and those types of things out there. What Mr. Wooldridge has described is simply like he said, they come there in the morning, they pick up their trucks and head out to the job sites or whatever, and they come back at night and they have a secure place to store that.
All right, and this particular decision is for this use only. If the use changes or the land sells, then that person would have to come back before the zoning board to address the use and that open storage.
That is correct. For instance, whatever this gentleman's business is, let's just say that he sells the business and somebody else comes in and starts running it the exact same way that he's running it. There is no need or requirement for that new owner to come back and get reapproval. But if this owner sells this property and they do want to use it as like a mini storage type place to just rent spaces out to store boats or RVs or that type of stuff, that is a change in the use, and that new owner would have to come back before the board for approval of whatever particular use they may want. And that applies to any type of use in our ordinance. Anytime there's a change in the use, the new owner has to come back and get reapproval.
Okay. And one more question, and just for the record, I think, this lot width is 150 feet wide on the front. Your zoning for C2 is a 200, so how, but I understand that it's grandfathered, is it
Yes,
legal grandfathered?
This is a lot of record, so anything prior to this ordinance, that is a permitted lot at that time.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, as it stands?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Let me say one more thing. We do have a definition of landscaping in the ordinance, and it says any improvement or vegetation, including but not limited to shrubbery, trees, plantings, outbuildings, walls, courtyards, fences, swimming pools, planters, gates, street furniture, exterior lighting, and site improvements, including but not limited to subsurface alterations, site regrading, field deposition, and paving.
All right, so what does that
Very-
definition mean?
it's very
Sounds
broad.
like Andy was right in the first place.
It's
We don't
very open. It could be gravel, it could be the existing grass. I know Andy and I have talked in the past that, you know, in an update to the ordinance, we do need to address the landscaping. I think it specifically applies to certain districts and areas that we have an ornamental landscaping definition,
Yeah.
which would apply to plants, you know, changing that.
Between commercial and residential, I think
Yes.
you need a screening buffer.
I don't disagree with you.
Okay. But it's so open now that,
It could literally be anything.
as long as it's, there won't be a fence, so it'll be 50 feet buffer, I assume, from any.
There's a fence on the,
There is a fence.
But there's a fence on the bottom,
Just to
on
the
the bottom part.
bottom.
There's a fence on the bottom part,
From there to the north.
but we're well over
So-
50, we're well over 50 feet from the property line.
Now, if
Yeah,
the
of course.
petitioner agrees to put shrubbery down, then we will put that in there. That would be fine.
any other questions? Any opposition? I entertain a motion.
I move that White Farms request or for a, what is the motion?
Site plan.
For a site plan be approved.
The motion is properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So it is. Stokes Road Shell.
Again, I'm gonna be the architect for this project. Rav Betty is the owner of this project. Can't make it today, but we're looking at a convenience store placement off Stokes Road. We're talking about a building that is about 5,200 square feet. It's a convenience store only. It does not have, you've probably seen convenience stores that have lease spaces adjoined to them where they'll have a separate business run out of that. But this is a convenience store only. It will not have any lease spaces attached to it. It is a building that is all brick. I do have some color renderings I'm going to pass out to you here in just a second. It's on a piece of property that is zoned C2 commercial, which this is an allowed use in a C2 commercial zone property. We meet all the setback requirements. We're not asking for any kind of a variance of any sort, so we're not looking for any change. So we feel that we've got a piece of property that is allowed to have a convenience store on the site. If I'm not mistaken, at one point in time in history, there was a gas station on this site or relatively close to the site. We adjoin two pieces of property that are C2, one to the south, one to the west. I think it's across the road. To the east is a agricultural zone piece of property. And then across Stokes Road, I think there's a piece of property that's zone residential. But again, we've met our requirements for the site with setbacks on along both roads, in the rear and the sides, and we're not asking for any kind of a variance. So we feel that we have a project that fits this site and would be good for the community. So, again, like I said, it's a brick building on all four sides. Come on. This is another C-store was done, but we're using the same bricks, same color pattern. On this building, as we did the other one, we're gonna have these windows on each side.
You need that. Okay, thanks.
Is the remains of the old building still there?
I'm not sure if the remains of an old building is still there or not. I couldn't answer that question, I'm sorry. You can see on the site plan, we've already done our drainage design for the site, so we are retaining our water on the site that's as required by the ordinance. So no water's gonna run off the site any more than what's, leaving the site today.
Any questions?
All right, this site plan, right down the road. One parcel away is a church. What is the distance from your property line to the property line of that church?
I don't know that.
Oh, well, it's about 450 feet.
Okay.
So I believe that what is the state law on alcohol sales in the vicinity of a church?
Man, if you wouldn't have asked me, I could have told you. I want to think it's 500 feet, but I do know that they measure that from door to door.
I know that, and
I
I'm aware of that. I'm thinking it's 400 feet.
Okay.
And so from property line to property line, I'm on a rough measure is 446, 450 feet. So I'm thinking that far as the state law on beer sales, that it's going to be okay.
I think so.
I'm looking right now.
You can ask Siri, she'll tell you. This is the parcel in question, and here's the church. And this is Paul Harper came to us. And this part was A1.
You are correct. It is 400 feet. But if, provided, however, within an area in which both the premises and the church, school, kindergarten, or funeral home are zoned commercial or industrial, such minimum distance shall not be less than 100 feet. So, I'm not sure how that applies as far as the zoning of the adjacent properties. I don't think that church is it? Okay, well then it's 100 feet then.
100 feet?
That's, if that's true. If both parcels are zoned commercial, then it's 100 feet. But I think, this would obviously meet 100 feet, and looks like it would obviously meet 400 feet, so.
Opposition?
Good morning, Board. My name's Toby Trowbridge, and my property is on Cedar Hill Road, just to the south of where y'all are in discussion right now. And I heard you talking about the Hopper piece of property and the Shell service station here, about their wishes to put something there. Of course, myself and a lot of people are objecting to this piece of property being built on and certain things out there in C2. But it goes a little further back than just what's going to be built out there. We have found, and I believe we can back it up, and I yield to the attorney for official review of it, that is neither one of those pieces of property are C2. And it has to go back to 1961, ladies and gentlemen, when the Madison County Board of Supervisors, knowing that the municipalities were starting to do zoning for C2, R2 in Madison County. So the Board of Supervisors in 61 came up with the idea that they needed to come along with the zoning also. Well, April 3rd of 1961, the Madison County Board of Supervisors passed a broad resolution giving the Board of Supervisors the authority for future zoning on all areas in Madison County without being in the municipalities, meaning municipalities did their own zoning. So they created districts. In this resolution in 1961, the Board of Supervisors did not zone anything or in any areas and simply set out by rules and regulations for future zoning, whether residential or commercial. Specifically, the Board of Supervisors authorized and gave itself the right to zone everything in the county not in existing municipalities, but not actually zoning anything at that point because they had no legal descriptions and they had to have a zoning request and a petition from the landowner to rezone this. In 1964, the zoning map for future zoning guidelines, have you passed all? They've all got this, okay.
Sheriff, I'm gonna, if it's all right with you, I'm just gonna admit all of these as exhibits to today's meeting, if that's what you're
Please, Mr. Clark, yeah. You have to bear with me. It's been about 11 years since I've stood up in front of everybody and asked for perfect things to be done just right. And also that it is on record being taped today. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So 1964, the Board of Supervisors came up with a map, and I don't know if Scott has it now or anything, where they put little green dots in certain intersections in the road, not on land, but in the road that showed possible places that commercial property may crop up and may be asked to be zoned by the landowner for purposes of C2. All right. There have been no new zoning changes in the records from 1961 A1 designation until the present. The zoning board has not done any changes since 1961. No Board of Supervisors zoning resolution or documents can be found of this. What we're trying to say is, if you will look on the back of the piece of property map you have, there is a Exhibit D. Do you have that on the back of it where they're showing Livingston Vernon, Stokes Road, where that is in red? Scott, do they have copies of that?
We don't have
I didn't know these were to be distributed.
Okay.
Indulge me one
I'm
second.
sorry, okay.
Yeah. Looked like a nice big stack of exhibits, now I get it.
Well, that's the 1961 Board of Supervisors zoning law, where this all came about. But if you will turn over to the maps, the gray map I have here, of Anderson Corner is what we'll call it. If you'll turn over to the map, walk up here, John, you'll turn over to your red and blue page here. You will see that in red, wherever this map came from, it just came up. Scott, when did this map appear in y'all's? Do you know?
Are you talking about what that shows the zoning?
When did this map come available, or when did y'all do this?
The first one that I showed that shows pretty much the same thing, is not the old one, was in the 1970s.
This here shows.
Sheriff, hold on, it's all right, we all get conversational in here,
I
but
understand.
sound doesn't pick it up.
This piece of, this exhibit right here shows in red what supposedly is classified as C2. And if you'll notice, it's Highway 22, the Cedar Hill, and if you'll see what it says, Livingston Vernon Road and Highway 22, that is circled in red is Hopper property, and then just to the north of that is the Shell Service Station piece of property. Stokes Road goes to the right. Then you come around to the left, that is in red also, that this map shows is C2. Are you following me so far? Okay, if you will turn back over to the top page, I have circled in blue.
Green.
Let's see, and Doctor, this one right here. I've circled it in blue. That is the north piece of property that shows C2 in red. That is incorrect. That is still part of Mr. John Anderson's place that is all classified still as A1, and he's taxed as A1, and it's part of his property. My contention is that map is incorrect. And in our looking, if you'll look back at the first page of the zoning, this docket, this petition was on the Paul Hopper, 0.9 of an acre. This was the first one to come before us that we had contentions with. We were told that this piece of property, the Shell Station, was going to be a year or two before he ever did anything with it. And I found it Wednesday that it was coming up before y'all today. So I apologize, I'm having to use a sworn affidavit for the Hopper property, but it's the same thing. I just hadn't had time to get you a affidavit for this piece of property that's come up here. The whole thing in a nutshell is Arnie Graves, who is a 32-year title analyst, has gone from 1961 through every Board of Supervisors minutes, every planning and zoning he can find that is in y'all's records, and every piece of property title he can find in the Chancery Clerk's office by Mr. Kermit Bridges or any of his family, and they have never, ever asked for this to be rezoned as C2, period. And our contention is, and me being in law enforcement like I have, if it's not in the report, it didn't happen, and it can't be found. Now, not to say it's not, the deeds are not misfiled somewhere, but if the deeds could be misfiled, why isn't it in the Board of Supervisors or your planning and zoning since 1961 about the Bridges or any of the Bridges family wanting to rezone this as C2? We can't be found. And I asked the board to table this or whatever you need to do until you can have a review to clarify this, as all of these parcels in there being C2. surely shows a layperson like me that Mr. John Anderson's showing C2 in where his office is and everything. And I have his tax record right here where that is still A1. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just ask that would you please do a review to make sure or show me where this was requested by any of the Bridges family. Mr. Bridges, who I've known for years, I've been out there for 28 years, or any of his family has zoned that C2 before we go further.
Was this another error, Andy?
I got a little confused there.
Well, I'm easy to confuse when I don't know what I'm talking about exactly.
All right.
Hold on a second.
Sorry?
Is this another error?
Sheriff Trowbridge has raised some issues this morning that are the first that I've heard of that. And I think Scott would agree with that too. So for me to give it a definitive answer on that, I can't give that today. I know Scott has been looking at this piece of property as well as the Hopper piece of property, trying to get some historical reference, but today's the first day that this has been brought to either of our attentions. I said today is the first day that either of these items have been brought to my attention, so I can't give a definitive answer as to whether there was an error or what's correct and what's not.
Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
When you say the Bridges property, that is the property in question for this site plan?
Mr. Kermit Bridges owned all of that from Stokes Road over to where the church is. When you were talking about the Hopper, we're calling it the Hopper property and the Shell Station property.
Okay.
All right, it has been sold. The Bridges family, his daughter, Mr. Bridges passed away. They sold it. It's my understanding that Celeste Bridges, or Williamson, I think, has sold it to the gentleman that wants to put the Shell Station there. And Paul Hopper bought 2.6, I think, Scott, I don't have it right in front of me, from Smith Realty, I believe, and was going to put a possible Family Dollar store there, which we have handled that. That was all Bridges property. And what I'm trying to explain or say is the Board of Supervisors cannot, in all of this paperwork in your 1961 to date, the Board of Supervisors cannot zone property. It has to be the landowner come and ask for rezoning. And to this day, we can find no evidence where any Mr. Bridges or any of his family has ever requested that property be zoned C2. As a matter of fact, your earlier maps just show that corner as a possibility that things may be growing that way and it may be used or rezoned for C2, but nothing's ever been in writing. Like I say, y'all don't have it, the Board of Supervisors minutes don't have it, and the Chancery Clerk has no deeds in it that shows that it's ever been changed from A1.
All right, historical question. When the zoning map was adopted by Madison County and it showed this area as C2, when the zoning map was adopted, there were public hearings on the zoning map?
I believe so. This would have been, the most recent would have been December of 19.
All right, originally,
Oh,
when this area was originally shown on the first zoning map that was adopted, was there a public hearing?
Gene, you know I wasn't alive back then. I can't answer that. I do not know that either.
May I approach?
Yes.
Don't mind. I've got a lot more than y'all probably have.
Yes, sir. If you're gonna talk, grab that mic. Yeah, please, sir.
and I do not have 5 of them for y'all. Your zoning maps over here, as you'll see, I'm looking upside down now. I've got to find, right here, you see the blue dot here? That was put on by the county, just showing the possibility that people may rezone, ask for rezoning during that. And it is right, I believe it's right there. That's in the road. That's not on pieces of property. That is just dots showing where it could be requested as a,
Right here.
yeah. Now later, this map appeared. I mean, with no documentation with it whatsoever.
This is in the minutes? You found this in the minutes?
It's just in y'all's, but no minutes with it or anything. And Ms. Beasley, see where I'm saying this is, yeah, John Anderson still up here, and that's his part of his A1 that he's taxed on.
Well,
And they've shown him his
you're talking about
C2.
right hand and left hand too, with zoning and taxation, and that doesn't always,
Right.
they don't always get the same message, you know.
Well, I guess and I'm just trying to make sure there's something in writing that an individual or family requested rezoning. And while you're looking at that, if I may, I do object to this service station out there. I've been out there for 20-something years, close to 28 years probably. I've seen service stations come and go in Flora, Mississippi, and 5-mile radius that this station will be. We've already lost 2 service stations in Flora. We're down to we have 3 service stations in Flora. You have one in the Kearney Park area that serves Kearney Park, Magnolia Heights out there. You have one at Livingston. That's 5 service stations within a 5-mile radius of this area. Ladies and gentlemen, we've already lost 2 in Florida. Somebody is going to go out of business if you put another one here. And specifically, probably the service station at Kearney Park. That's real necessary for folks up that way.
I assume the petitioner has done a traffic study?
No, ma'am, and we requested the Board of Supervisors because of the hopper, and forgive me, I'm way behind on this one because we were told that this was going to be a year or 2 before the gentleman ever did anything with it. So we've been working on the hopper problem, him wanting to put a Family Dollar store up there, and he texted me the other day, he's forgot about that. He's not even going to try that. So, you know, we're at another junction with that. So that's why I'm a little behind on this one, because we were working on Hopper, which it was fitting to do something immediately. I have requested that the Board of Supervisors entertain or get a traffic study done. I believe, I cannot answer for them, but a highway department is going to have to do it. That is a heavily traveled highway. They launch like off of aircraft carriers coming and going off of Livingston Vernon Road out there. And IE in that curve, just last year, retired deputy sheriff died, and at his funeral, one of the deputies' cars got run over while he was trying to direct traffic out there. I don't think you can and the highway department at where the church is you were talking about, ma'am, there's a life building next to the church for Sunday school, stuff like that. And I was a member of the church when we were doing this. The highway department, we were going to put a daycare center there. The highway department told us, he said, I wouldn't even contemplate putting a daycare center there with the traffic you got out here. It's a highly traveled road, and I think hopefully the Board of Supervisors will get that started for us. Any other questions? We just ask that you continue this, if you would, to do a analysis just to make sure that somebody did ask for rezoning of this.
At this point, based on the information, we entertain a motion.
Should we let Daniel?
Sure,
address it?
yes.
Yes, please. All right, and I've been in contact with the owner. He bought the piece of property from Celeste Williamson. Celeste Williamson. That's who the owner bought the property from.
From who?
It's, I don't think it's the exact same property he's speaking of. The gas stations in Florida that have closed, the owners, the research that they've done prior to this is those have been bought by some bigger developers that got plans in the Florida area. So that's the reason they have closed down, not because of competition really. This is, it's located conveniently between Livingston and Flora. It's that opportunity again for convenience. It's a convenience store. That's what it is. It's there for convenience. You can see the future of 22. It's growing with residential and houses. On the east end, we've got the Amazon and the people that go to work at Amazon. It's just it is a lot busier road, and this is another opportunity for convenience store there at Stokes Road. Again, the property was shown to us as C2. It shows on the map as C2 piece of property. My owner bought it for that purpose. He was told by the county that it was C2 piece of property. We don't have any kind of curb cuts or access right off on the 22, so we've met with the engineer, the county engineer, and he has no issue with that problem. So we feel like we've met all the requirements that's required for a C2 piece of property for a building that is allowed, or a business that is allowed in a C2 piece of property.
I think the problem is that there's no record of showing when it was changed over, and I think that some study should be looked into to make sure that it is actually C2.
Well, again, it shows on the zoning map that it's a C2 piece of property. There was a gas station there before, which obviously it has been used as a commercial piece of property. I don't know the age of that station that was there. I don't know if it was there prior to 1961? 60. I was born in 61, so this is kind of like... So at that point, it was being used as a commercial piece of property, so I would think when the county came and was looking at that they had to place some zoning, this was being used as commercial.
I entertain a motion.
All right.
I have just a comment before we have a motion. Does this, realistically, are we looking at this particular argument being made every time we have something like this come up? Is it challengeable? Is the very zoning that we have on our books challengeable by anybody like Sheriff Trowbridge and his attorney that want to go back and go through the records and they can't find any evidence that it's been zoned that way? Is it something that can legitimately be challenged on every zoning question going forward?
I'd say yes, that they can. Just an overall statement, and Scott and I talk about this very, very regularly. 1960, 61 Madison County and 2023 Madison County are obviously very, very, very different. as are all of the years in the interim. You know, record keeping is not perfect. I think it has certainly gotten better with technology, and, you know, things get lost, things get misplaced. And I'm not saying that there was ever any existence of it, but it requires some certain due diligence, because obviously we want to protect the interest of the folks that live out there, live out that way, in balance with the rights of the developer and people that have owned that property or have bought the property with plans to build. You know, sometimes there is not a perfect answer, so you have to go to the next right answer. And that's all we want to do. We just want to get the right answer for everybody involved. But to answer you, that's a long-winded question to say
Oh,
yes.
and I apologize for the vague nature of the question, but the reality is we have to work with what we have.
That's correct.
And at some point in time, the world in general recognized this property to be Zone C2. I don't know what that point in time was, but had this project not come along and gotten your attention, the property would still be Zone Z2 and with nobody questioning anything about it.
Hold up, don't speak from the audience, please. We can't hear, or the folks watching can't hear.
What I would suggest in the form of a motion is that we table this question till the December meeting, and in the intervening time, that we make the best effort that we can make to see what this property should have been zoned all along, no matter whether the family requested it or whether it just got put in a zoning plan and was approved for decades. Somehow this got approved to be C2, and I'd like for us to be able to do a little bit of due diligence, so to speak, and so that we can have made our best effort to decide whether this is a valid concern or not, or whether we really need to be looking at the zoning on this property or not. Once that's established, then I think the rest of your concerns can better be addressed, but
What we would like, I guess in that point, what we'd like to see is a decision of approval contingent that we prove that the zoning is correct. That would keep us from having to come back months later
Okay,
to
hold
do
one
the same
second.
thing.
When his
excuse me.
statement, he said in the form of a motion.
I said that I would be willing to
Oh,
put that
okay.
in the form
All
of a
right.
motion, but I
Okay.
think, unless I'm mistaken, there are there's other points of opposition that haven't been heard.
Okay.
And I think if we're going to look at giving conditional approval to the motion, then we need to hear the rest of the points of opposition.
And I'm feeling this, that I think we need to first of all prove that it is what they say it is. And so to hear everybody and it's not what it's supposed to be, it doesn't really make sense. That's why I would entertain a motion right now
I
to
have
do
a
a study.
comment. Can I make
Yes, ma'am.
a point? All right, in government, all right, what I understand is in 1961, there was a zoning ordinance adopted. In 1964, there was a zoning map adopted. The process of adopting those things require public notice. And in 64, that would be in the paper, the local paper. Once that notice is put in the paper, all opposition has a certain length of time in which to oppose that adoption. If no opposition was brought forward at that time, I'm thinking that the ordinance and the map as adopted or as proposed is then legal. That's my thought. if that procedure was followed.
100%. If the procedure was followed, you are 100% correct. I think what the sheriff and others are saying is that there was never any procedure followed. Is that correct?
May I address that?
Yeah.
Understand exactly what you're saying. What I'm trying to say is may have to walk up there and show you what exhibit that was in the 60s, is just dots.
Yeah, we saw that.
Dots in the road. Thank you. Back then, the board only adopted that they could use this, and they put dots in the road, not on the property, that it could be requested to be zoned. That was not them zoning that road or land. It was just where it was proposed that the C2 may move to.
Gotcha.
So that's where we stand right now. Is the only thing I have no earthly idea where what time these maps just showed up. Scott, do you know what time these maps were redone and where the authentatious,
I have a map from the 1970s in my office that shows those same zonings as current now.
with the legal description that the public hearing was done and everything was followed?
See, the thing is, the board can do it as a comprehensive zoning.
Right, well, that we find no record of any rezoning since the early time. There again, that's why I come to y'all to do a dive into it to make sure I'm not wrong. And neither is this a title analyst of 32 years.
This is from the minute books? Is this map from the minute books, or where did he get this?
I think this is from Scott's office, or y'all's zone, yeah. And like I say, it didn't zone the property back then. It just zoned, it didn't zone. They didn't have the board has no authority to zone, okay? It just put dots showing where the possibility of rezoning may come to. It says if you'll read the,
I think that this is a matter that needs to be looked into further, so we can make sure that we have some kind of justification for the zoning map the way it is today. That said, in order to respond to the petitioner's request that we approve this conditionally to that point, or to us finding out that that's okay, I think we need to hear the rest of the oppositions. There are other people who want to speak in opposition that don't have anything to do with the zoning, correct?
Hello, Board. Hello, everyone. My name's Sam Martin. I'm an attorney in Jackson, and I live at 128 Stokes Road. To put that in perspective, if you are to look at this plat map, for whatever reason, my parcel's not on there, but my home is within 500 feet of this project. Of course, that's important because you all are tasked with considering whatever structures may be within 500 feet. And to that point, and I'm reading, the purpose of this review is to ascertain whether or not the applicant's proposed building or structure conforms with the ordinance and other applicable laws, will maintain harmony and continuity with similar existing uses within the district, and considering other like structures within 500 feet of the proposed structure. Now, harmony is an interesting word. I don't think of a gas station when I think of harmony. I don't think a gas station is harmonious with residential estate property or with a church. And if you look at the county zoning map, Madison County zoning map, there's only one gas station in the entire county that is next to residential estate property. That is at the intersection of Luckett Road and Highway 16 in the northeastern part of the county. Now, if you've been up there, then you know that that area, compared to this area, is not experiencing the growth nor is it in the growth path that is expected in this area, off of Stokes Road, Livingston Vernon, and Highway 22. Simply put, they do not compare. And there's a reason why there's only one gas station in the county next to a residential estate area. It's simple. It does not fit. That's what we're asking the board to consider here today. A gas station does not fit this area. It's not harmonious. When we think of gas stations, we think of harsh lights, loud music, late hours. Again, we have churchgoers just down the street. We have families. We have retirees. They do not want a gas station. Now, having said that, I know that right now we're just considering a site plan, and there's a few considerations I'd ask you all to look at. The landscaping in the back and the side of this site plan does not appear to meet the minimum yards requirement. According to section 2203.4, and I'm reading, you all mentioned this earlier in the meeting, for side yards and rear yards where abutting any residential district, the minimum yard requirements shall be 50 feet, which shall remain open and be landscaped, or 20 feet, which shall remain open and be landscaped, and a fence approved by the zoning administrator along side or rear yards. Now, if you look at the site plan, or at least the one that was online, I was not able to see any sort of landscaping towards the side or to the back. That's a major concern. Of course, no one wants a gas station in their backyard, but as much lipstick that you can put on the pig, that's what we're asking for. If it's within your hands to say, we do want a gas station, if that's what you all decide, we're simply asking, have appropriate landscaping, have appropriate architecture. Again, nobody wants a gas station in their backyard, but if it does go there, we're asking for appropriate landscaping and architecture that makes sense for this area. We don't think a gas station makes sense at all, but if it is, we need specific restrictions on what goes in there. Another major concern of ours is the lighting. The lighting outside. Think about any gas station in Madison County. It's lit up, it looks like a military base, right? There's white lights everywhere. Specifically this one, it has six gas pumps. It's 5,000 square feet. We know that's gonna be a lot of lighting. We ask you all to consider that. We ask for a lighter, a moonlight. That's what the Mansell overlay requires, is a moonlight, which is a softer light. It's something that isn't going to cause a lot of light pollution in this area. Again, this is a sleepy area. Yes, Highway 22 is very busy. Livingston Vernon's very busy, but this is a residential area right here. There's a church right next door. We don't want lighting right into our homes. I mean, that's a simple request, right? Finally, as part of this consideration, and this is in the ordinance and I'm reading it, the board must consider whether proposed structures are incongruent or inharmonious in such a manner as to cause or provoke one or more of the following: lower property values, decreased economic growth, or diminished future opportunities for land use and development. Now, if you think about those three things, what this is proposed to go in here, it's going to do all three of those things. We simply ask, we understand that this may be commercial, it may not be. There's obviously further review we need to do on that. But if it is commercial, whatever goes in here needs to fit those three things, because this is a high growth area. You look at this area 5, 10, 20 years from now, it will be seemingly in your hands, of course, but it'll be a high growth area. And we're just simply asking that whatever goes in there matches what is currently there and what may be there in the future. One last point is that we have been working, many people in the audience, with Mr. Clark to develop an overlay district. It's going to be called the Anderson-Livingston Heritage Preservation Overlay. And so we simply ask you all to table this until we have the time to get that in front of the Board of Supervisors. Thank you for your time.
My name is Mark Morgan, and I've been voted by the membership of Damascus Baptist Church, which is the identified church in the area, okay? Guys, we've had a couple of our members in the last 10 years that have had wrecks out here in this curve of the road. Guys, we're not so, like, adamantly opposed to development, but I will tell you that this design belongs in an urban area. This is a sleepy little area down the scenic highway of 22, which has been designated by MDOT as a scenic highway. And you're fixing to put a huge bright light, huge convenience store there, right in the middle of a residential area. And listen, we may be 450 feet away from this particular convenience store, but don't particularly like our children coming out of this activity center and watching people fill up their front seat with beer. Just not, we're not happy about it. We also have to understand our perspective, guys. Is we've been a sleepy little church out on the curve, right? But we're really growing, and we see the traffic out in front of the church and how intense it is. And it's the sense that it goes into a big curve, and in that curve, every other car is doing 60 miles an hour in a curve they probably shouldn't be doing 60 miles an hour in. And I will tell you that already it is so dangerous in that curve that just to bring more activity to that area is insane without something from MDOT to approve or to change as far as infrastructure is concerned in order to adopt maybe a traffic light or something in that area before you start building a monstrosity and then that becoming a destination where people are going to stop in the curve. And so you already have a problem with people who are pulling off of that curve or pulling into that curve coming from Flora is really bad. And it's just, as we were, Toby mentioned, guys, listen, we were told 10 years ago that there was too much traffic for a daycare out there. And now we're going to bring a Family Dollar and a convenience store right next door in the same curve. And something doesn't make sense. And so we 4 months ago had 2 residential homes on 2 large pieces of property next door to us. And out of sight, out of mind, I'm not worried about what some map said somewhere in some office. All I'm telling you is that the whole landscape suddenly is suddenly development. And we are a little shocked by that, of course, because we thought everything was residential, because out of sight, out of mind, okay? But everybody out there is very, very concerned about this. And even though, yes, anybody out there may enjoy having some convenience store there, but not to the point where this looks like something from an urban area. It's just inappropriate out there. And listen, we are really actively wanting to put in an overlay committee so that we're a part of that as a community, and we just want to take a look at what's being developed and to see if there's some kind of limits can be placed on what might be developed. And we need time for that, but that is moving forward, and the church contributed well over 100 signatures to that petition, okay, in order to create an overlay committee out there for development and just to keep an eye on development and be a part of those decisions as a citizenry out there, okay, as residents. But I will tell you this, there's a lot of people that go to our church too, that they have invested in property out there because it's a sleepy little area. And it's suddenly, with that development, not going to be that at all. So you're changing a landscape that is drastic and tragic, if the truth were known. Anyway, ma'am.
Question, how far along are you on that overlay district? Just talking?
Would you like? I'm going to a little more involved.
I'm Celia Manley, and I live out at Stokes Road. Okay, I'm Celia Manley, and I live out at Stokes Road. And there's been a good group of residents that live in the area that see the need for an overlay. We see the positive things that have taken place with the Mansdale-Livingston overlay and how they have protected some of the historical places there. We don't have historical buildings, even though I do think that one section of the church is a historical building. But we do have other things we'd like to preserve. And understanding that we have a scenic byway that runs from the Natchez Trace in Canton on 22 to the Petrified Forest in Flora, that is one of 14 designations by our state that we should feel proud about and try to preserve in some sort of way. So to answer your question, we have taken the zoning guidelines that you guys have already in your comprehensive plan for 2019 for the MLHP. And we have an attorney reviewing those for us. And so we have not filed any zoning papers yet, and I think Scott and Andy both have been helping us with that, and we're in the process of moving forward with that, hopefully to have it probably the next 2 to 4 weeks in the beginning stages of zoning.
What is your architectural goals?
They're going to be similar to what Mansdale has, but probably of a little lesser quality, mainly because that is more of a rural area. We're not looking to have iron fencing or, just real decorative type structures, but at the same time want to make sure that it keeps with the rural nature and characteristic of the area.
Andy, how long should we expect this process to take?
It takes a while. Scott and I communicated with CMPDD, which is the group that we coordinate with our zoning ordinance. And Scott helped me here. Gray Oots is our contact there. And she has advised that this is essentially a rezoning because you're adding a zoning designation or an overlay to property. So that entails all of the characteristics of a rezoning, as far as legal descriptions go and proof of change in character of the neighborhood, all of those types of things that you would have to
A public need.
All of those types of
So
things.
this is not a table it for 1 month kind of deal?
Probably not.
This is going to take
Probably not.
considerably longer than that. Okay.
It would.
That was my question. Thanks.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I'd like to hear the architect about specifically the lighting, the landscaping, and if there's been a traffic study or if y'all have done any kind of traffic.
We have not done a traffic study, I can tell you that now. On the lighting issue, per ordinance and zoning, we cannot have light pollution. We can't let light leave our site cross property lines. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but we have to prove that we're not letting light cross our property lines onto somebody else's property. Now, obviously, you can look at the site and see the lights, but that light is not leaving the property. And we proved that through a study done with our electrical engineers, and we'll provide that to the county. The building architecturally, I understand the issue of an overlay and protecting the architectural nature of buildings and construction. And this convenience store is not your type of convenience store you see on the side of the interstate or a superhighway that's slick and metal and shiny, and it's more to the nature of what you're going to see in downtown Flora and what you're seeing in Livingston. It's a brick building. It's got the brick detailing on it. The owner is conscious of that, and it's more of a rural-looking store that you would find in this type of area. Yes, we are on the side of, or really close to Highway 22. We don't have any driveways, exits, or entries that are coming off 22, so we're not adding cars actually at different times coming onto 22. They're still going to use the exact same intersection that is there now. There might be some extra cars but they'll still be in line, they'll still be coming out. They just won't be all coming out at one time as if we had 2 or 3 driveways that were coming out on Highway 22. Landscaping, we can add landscaping. This was kind of like the previous one where the back property line is a long way off from the actual building itself, and we didn't show any landscaping in the very back of the building. But that's not to say we can't do that. We can provide more landscaping if that's something that is desired.
That answers my questions.
Thank you very much.
And the traffic study has not been done?
There's not been a traffic study done. We know there's an increase in traffic just because of Amazon.
Right.
There's more residential that's being built in neighborhoods around. And, you know, and this convenience store gives people the opportunity to be able to stop on their way home, not run back over the floor and get something and run back home or run back up to Livingston. It's something they're going to pass. We're not, and again, I stated in the very beginning, we don't have rental space for this. We've kept it as small and convenient as possible. We're not adding a restaurant next to it or a liquor store. You know, nothing with that is being added to it. So it's just the convenience store and the gas station itself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Williams. I'm on Parkinson Road, which is the road past Stokes. But I'm not against development, but a 6-pump gas station is extremely large for that area. When Livingston already has the 2 pumps, or 3 pumps, I'm sorry, and, you know, within 2 miles of there, and then you have Flora that has the other pumps. The need for 6 pumps, I just don't see it being a need. The traffic is bad right through there. You have the people coming that are commuting from Yazoo and Bentonia into Jackson, and putting a 6-pump gas station at that spot coming off of that major curve is going to create a very bad accidents. I have 2 children. We drive that road, you know, multiple times a day, and there's accidents already there. But if you pull in and somebody's stopping and they're coming off the highway at that speed, anyway, it's just going to be a nightmare. But I do not feel like there's a need for a 6-pump gas station. I'm not against the growth. I think a nice, you know, soft spot or soft area of some kind of commercial space that's soft, not a hard, harsh lighting. There's lots of development out there, but all those people are spending premium dollars for this acreage to put large homes and to have acreage so their families can roam, and they're not wanting a brick gas station with 6 pumps. They'll drive to Madison. That's why they moved there, you know. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Speak to the intersection.
Yes, sir.
It's bad enough coming from east to west on Highway 22, because when you're trying to Y off to Livingston Vernon, and let's face it, they're not running 60 miles an hour. They're running 70 and 75 miles an hour out there on 22. So if you're coming from east to west, you exit 22 on the Livingston Vernon. They're running, by the time they exit, they're down to 60 miles an hour when they enter county road. 45 miles an hour is the speed limit on a county road, so they're already traveling at a high rate of speed. They're coming out of that curve, they got to get on their brakes going east to west. The real problem, and it may be that the county would even have to reconstruct the road if this is where we're going. When you're coming from west to east, headed from Flora to Canton, to turn left to go north on Livingston Vernon, you don't make a 90-degree turn. You have to make about a 110 to 120-degree turn to come back to the north. So you're going to have to stop. Traffic is pretty well tied up out there as it is anyway going. So when a person is coming out of a curve from the west to the east, you have maybe 50, 60, 70 yards to get on your brakes when a person stopped, because he's got to make a 110 or plus degree turn back. It's not just a 90 where he just shoots out there. He's got to get past the turn and come back. And that is severe problems for somebody running 60, 70 miles an hour coming west to east on 22, especially with the amount of log trucks that are going from Vicksburg to Canton in North Madison County logging. They just don't get shut down in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman for the church.
May I just May I please just add that one of the reasons why we would like to have an overlay committee is simply because we would like to prevent our scenic highway from having liquor stores and marijuana dispensaries. And we would like to be able to put that on a prohibitive list and be a part and act part of that. Okay, and we're concerned about that out in the county. So thank you.
Entertain a motion.
We have a motion.
If anybody thought I was making a motion earlier, I withdraw it. That was not meant to be a motion. I would like to move now that we approve the petitioner's request conditioned upon the review of the zoning to make sure that the zoning is, we have an idea of whether it's correct or not, and if it's not correct, then this all goes away. And secondly, conditional upon a traffic study. It sounds like that there's a lot of concern about the traffic in the area. I would move that we approve it based condition on those two things.
I'm not going to second it. I
Okay, do you have a
why don't we
motion? and
table
second?
it?
If you're not going to second that, the appropriate.
For lack of a second, then
Yeah, unless Dr. Rouser would second, then it would die for a lack of a second, or you can make a substitute motion.
go ahead.
Right. I would move that we table the request for approval of the site plan until we answer the question as to whether or not it's, that area is legally zoned. And I think that's my motion.
I second that motion.
Aye. Are you going to call for the vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I was the only one that wasn't in on the motion.
Opposed?
Okay.
All right.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, sir. You too.
We don't do a traffic study on the highway. That's the state thing. You have to
Motion.
request the state to do it.
The December's meeting, the 14th.
So moved.
Second. So it is.
So, December 14th. Appreciate you.
Hey, Toby.
Inconsistencies and everything, but
Oh, it's all right.
like I said, I just had time Wednesday to know this was on.